Well, hi there, everybody. I'm Jeff Mayers from wisppolitics.com and wispbusiness.com, here for a policy seminar on Japan, Wisconsin trade relations, quiet partners in a turbulent world. This is part of our trade policy series with the Wisconsin Technology Council. It's our fourth one of the year. You can see others at wispbusiness.com. And you can also see Talking Trade, our weekly podcast on trade issues affecting Wisconsin. We'll have a new Talking Trade later this week. But today, we're going to talk again about Japan and Wisconsin, quiet partners in a turbulent world. Very timely, of course, with President Biden in the Far East, talking with Asian leaders, including the Chinese president and leader, Xi. And so this is very timely to talk about trade with Japan and Wisconsin. So I'm going to introduce my good friend, Tom Still. He's president of the Wisconsin Technology Council, and he will be moderating this event. Hi, Tom. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that intro. And you're right about this being so timely with what's going on in the Far East at this moment, but also just around the world. And, when you think about it, based on size alone, China's really an imposing economic force in the world and in Wisconsin. It's the third largest market here, but it's also a source of worry for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. It's an era of global tension, and there's been talk of decoupling in a lot of subtle ways. But then there's Japan. Japan is a steady Asian democracy with economic ties to Wisconsin that span from soy sauce production in Walworth County to foundry floors in Wapaka to construction equipment in Milwaukee and biotech in Madison. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about that today. Just some other background numbers. Japan was Wisconsin's seventh largest trading partner in 2021, and that was at nearly $700 million. And that's more than a third of China's total of about 1.8 billion. But you have to remember that Japan's population is only about 10%, even a little less, of China's 1.4 billion people. And direct investment here by Japan, Japanese companies, has grown steadily over time, 2.4 billion in since 2014 alone. And so it's the state's largest foreign investor. And that's basically true around the country. Japan's the biggest foreign direct investor in 36 different states. And it's in the top three in the rest. So that tells you about what's going on there. I mean, there's Japan's first among international sources in creating U.S. manufacturing jobs, first in total R&D spending. Japanese companies employ 1 million Americans collectively, which is, a huge figure when you think about it. So we're here to dive into that a little more today about, with some people who are doing business in Japan or doing business here and their Japanese roots, or all of the different combinations of that. And I'm going to just quickly introduce them, and then I'm going to go back to talk to each one in a row. Dan Miller is with us. Dan is vice president of Kikkoman Foods in Walworth. So that's basically southeast Wisconsin. And he's going to tell us a little bit about what they do. But, Kikkoman's a great example of how these Japanese ties were built over time. They're coming up on 50 years here. And so Dan himself has been with Kikkoman for 25 years. Frank Fahn is here. He's the head of biology for Promega. Promega is sort of the granddaddy of all biotech companies in Wisconsin and doing business around the world. I forgot exactly how many countries, but Frank could tell us. And a lot of locations around the world, including a 50-person office in Japan. And so we'll hear more from Frank. Rob Labreglio is with us. Rob is the co-founder, co-owner, and brewmaster at Great Dane Pub. So you're going to ask, okay, Great Dane, you probably know them, 5 different locations around the state. Why Japan? And so Rob's going to be able to tell us more about that. And I think so this kind of crosses the line of, from biotech to brewing to foods and kind of that associated line. So there's a lot going on and a lot of opportunity there. And hopefully a little later, if possible, we might hear from Tomoyuki Hasegawa, who is with Fujifilm, their affiliate here. They own Cellular Dynamics International in Madison, as well as another biotech company in Wisconsin. So I'm going to start with Dan. Thank you for joining us, and tell us a little bit about Kikkoman, all of its different lines of business, and kind of why Wisconsin. I know that was a long time ago, so you weren't around to hear about the original story, but perhaps you've picked that up over time.
Sure, I have. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the opportunity to talk today a little bit about our history at Kikkoman Foods Incorporated. As Tom mentioned, our grand opening was in June of 1973, so we're coming up on our 50th anniversary next year. Prior to 1973, in the late 1960s and early 1970s, Kikkoman products were being sold in the United States, but they were being brewed in Japan. So it was a process of shipping our raw ingredients, soybeans and wheat primarily, over to Japan, a lot of it coming from North America, to be converted into soy sauce and shipped back to the US. Well, around that time in the early 1970s, it was determined that the demand was sufficient for us to build a plant here in the US. And we're often asked, why Wisconsin? Why are we located here? And it's really 4 reasons. First reason is from a distribution standpoint. Our headquarters and main plant here was established to serve all of North America. So from a shipping standpoint, we wanted to be centrally located, north, south, east, west, to serve all of the markets here in North America. Second, proximity to our raw ingredients. We wanted to be located in the soy and wheat growing region of the country, here in the breadbasket of the country in the upper Midwest. The next reason is one of our primary ingredients is pure water, and the state of Wisconsin has an ample supply of great groundwater that's perfect for the brewing of soy sauce. And then finally, we wanted to be located in a rural area because of the work ethic and because of the loyalty that often develops between workers and an employer in a rural area, and that's why we located here in Walworth, Wisconsin. And it has been a formula that has been very successful for us. So we wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Since our founding in 1973, we've seen steady growth in our products. Every year we've grown pretty much since we opened the doors. In 1998, we opened a second plant here in the United States in Folsom, California, Northern California near Sacramento. Currently, we produce at this facility here in Walworth, we produce 50 different products. All of those products are either a version of soy sauce or have soy sauce as their primary ingredient. Last year, we employed 200 employees, a few more than that. Last year, we produced about 40 million gallons of products. We ship our products all over North America, as well as exporting a fairly small percentage, but to about 20 overseas countries as well. The markets that we serve really break down in 3 different segments. Our largest market, which represents about 50% of our production volume, is the food service or restaurant market. Primarily, those customers are served and purchase 5-gallon pails of our product, of soy sauce. Next would be the industrial market. The industrial market, as we call it, basically selling our product in bulk to food manufacturers, and pretty much every major food manufacturer in some way purchases our product to go as an ingredient into something that they make. And that represents about 30% of our production volume here. And then finally, retail. The last 20% of the retail products, the products that you find in the supermarket. Of our 2 facilities here in the United States, we bottle all of our retail products here in Walworth, Wisconsin. So when you think about that, the scope of that, every bottle of Kikkoman soy sauce in every supermarket in every town in North America gives you a kind of an idea of the scope of our operation, or the scale of the production that we do here in Walworth, Wisconsin. Our senior management team, it's a great partnership between local managers and expats coming over from Japan. It's about 50-50. Our senior management team, we work great together. We're constantly learning from each other. After 50 years, we're pretty good at what we do, and we understand each other pretty well. And I think the synergy of the US style of management and the Japanese style of management together, again, has been a formula that's been really successful for us here in US.
Well, thanks, Dan, for those introductory comments. We'll have some questions later. Let me get to Frank Fahn from Promega. Frank, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me representing Promega. But first, thank you, Dan. Congratulations on your 50 years. And I always thought the Kikkoman soy sauce on the Chinese or the Asian restaurant in US came from Japan, but now I know they came from Wisconsin. Fantastic. Before I start, I'd like to just give a quick thanks to my colleagues, Karen in the corporate affairs, our general manager, Masa-san in Japan, and our CFO, Chris Yarbrough, to help me preparing the materials here. So as Tom, you mentioned, Promega is a pioneer in the biotechnology industry, and not only for Wisconsin, but around the world. So we totally, with our global footprints, we have 17 branches operating in 16 countries. The only country that have 2 branches will be a country that's very close to me, that would be China. So I have 2 there. One is just like the other 15 doing marketing and sales, and then the other branch is focusing on manufacturing. So that's in Shanghai. So our company this year will be on its 44th anniversary, a bit short of 50. So now we opened operation of branch in Japan in 1995, and so that brings it to 27th year this year. So speaking of why we're opening branches there, at least I can see the following 3 reasons. One is really rooted from our founder and leader, Bill's vision. So he started the company in 1978 clearly with a vision of globalization. So he established many global branches in early years. And obviously, this will bring in Promega's technology and product around the world. And the second reason is something that Dan talked about, is close to the customers in that particular country and that particular market. So for all the 16 branches working with distributors and other in other countries or in your own countries, that basically make awareness of the tools and product we make, and also able to help delivering those tools to the hands of our customers in that country, in this case, Japan. But more importantly, we're very technology savvy. So the technical support in their own language is extremely important. So that's one of the key drivers when we strategically have set up all these branches. And the third is more of a unique, as you all know, that Promega is still a private company. So we do things really naturally and see how things are many times bringing up to the point that we need to establish a branch. So as Tom mentioned, that in Japan's market is actually much larger if you go back in the 70s and 80s than place like China. We don't really have a presence, but I can tell you that Bill established China branch in 1985, and then Japan is 10 years later. And part of the reason is that he had some very special links to China. And then with Japan, it's the market, and also it depends on the people that he was working with. And then naturally, it happened in 1995. Our general manager, Masa-san, is still the GM, and he just will be announced he will be retiring next April. So he has been with us for the whole 27 years. So it's also very timely, as you mentioned, that President Biden is in Asia, and in fact, Bill and some senior leaders of Promega right now is in Asia as well. So they're visiting Korea, Japan, and Singapore. And I have the pleasure of visiting Japan 2 months ago, and as the COVID restriction relax and so on. So from those points, just quickly to summarize, and then we established the branches there are closely interacting with our customers. It is the third largest branch based on the revenue behind North America and Germany. It has been growing very well. And then today we have 50 employees. Last time I visited, they just moved during the COVID year to a new office in Tokyo, not far away from their previous one, but fantastic setting with all the modern design and so on. So love to share with more in the Q&A, but
Yeah.
back to you.
Well, thank you, Frank. Yeah, great summary. And, you know, for those who maybe aren't totally familiar with Promega, about 4,000 total products. So,
Correct.
So it's a big footprint that way. Well, let me turn to Rob Labreglio from Great Dane Pub. You know, this is really interesting story to me, and I'm sure you've been able to tell it pretty well over time. But you know, you're co-founder, co-owner, brewmaster, and you have both some family and I think some other ties that kind of drew you into wanting to be in Japan. As well as there are probably some local restrictions or state restrictions on how many brew pubs you could actually have in Wisconsin. So Rob, take it away. Tell us why Sendai.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Greetings, everyone. So yeah, you probably touched on two very important topics there. The first being that I guess myself and my project over there is a bit of an outlier in this group in that it's based more on personal connections than some type of international business strategy.
Mhm.
And also the fact about opportunity as well. So we just celebrated our 28th anniversary here in Madison. And going back about to the beginning, I was introduced to a Japanese gentleman by the name of Tetsuya Kiyosawa by my brother. My brother is a professor of Japanese studies at Oxford Brookes University in England. And again, through him, I met Tetsuya, who was studying in Madison. And he was infatuated with the brewing process and the concept of craft beer. So I became friends with him. I trained him as a brewer. And then when he went back to Japan, he worked in the industry for a while. He worked with Yahoo Brewing Company, the makers of Yona Yona Ale, which is one of the probably the most famous craft brewery in Japan. And we always stayed friends, and we always talked about doing a project together. So this is the culmination of that relationship. And definitely one thing that drove me over there is the fact that we are limited in Wisconsin. You can only have 2 brew retail liquor licenses if you are a production brewery. Otherwise, you can have up to 6 retail liquor licenses if you remain as a brew pub group. So basically, it makes it impossible to cross the lines between having brew pubs and also being a production brewery of significant size. So craft beer is on the rise in Japan, and currently it accounts for about 3% of beer consumption over there. No one really believes that it's going to make it up into the teens like it has in the US, but at the same time, indicators suggest that it should be getting, well, at least doubling in size. And there really aren't enough craft breweries to satisfy that extra beer that needs to be produced. So, I'm also, as a brewer, really kind of, and this might show a certain prejudice, but here in the US right now, there's a lot of competition, and there's a heavy infatuation with hoppy beers, and I always consider myself more of a traditional brewer. We like offering a variety of beers, but at the same time, the darling beer of the week just changes in the U.S. And I'd like to spend my time and efforts as a brewer building, a couple of iconic brands. But anyway, we did a lot of work with JETRO, the Japan External Trade Organization. They helped us immensely, made a lot of important connections for us when we were first looking at Japan. Eventually, we ended up honing into the Miyagi Prefecture. We had the officials from the Miyagi prefectural government come and visit us here in Madison. I returned favor by going over there and visiting Sendai. When I arrived in Sendai, I was extremely impressed. It reminded me of basically Madison on steroids, a large, vibrant, young city with good beer consumption, a lot of sports enthusiasm. It's one of Japan's growing cities. It has the largest university in the Tohoku region. It has the Tohoku government there. So it just, again, it just seemed to be, kind of kismet in a way that it felt like Madison did to me way back when we got started. So, we started this process over 8 years ago. And finally, now, after 8 years, we broke ground last month. Going over next week, we're going to have the groundbreaking ceremony, and hopefully we will be open by late spring or summer.
Great.
And also, we're going to be kind of distinctly different. We're inverting our business model as compared to what we do here in Wisconsin. Over there, we are going to be primarily a production brewery, and we're going to have a tasting room restaurant at the brewery. But really, our focus is going to be marketing our beer throughout Japan.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Rob. And a couple of takeaways from this. It sounds like patience is required when you're, engaged in something. I mean, you talked about 8 years, and but also sounds like there's a lot of openness and a lot of opportunity there. We can cover some of that later. And thank you for mentioning JETRO. For our viewers, that's the Japan External Trade Organization. And they have 6 different offices around the United States, including Chicago. And over time, people from JETRO have been very involved in Wisconsin. So Rob, that's good to hear that you also work with them over time.
Yeah, they've been invaluable.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we welcome to Tomoyuki Hasegawa. Tom, he goes by Tom, is he's the president and CEO for Fujifilm CDI. Now, Fujifilm is increasingly one of its biggest divisions has been around health. And so Tom can tell you more about that, but he has a deep background in tissue engineering, regenerative medicine, electronic imaging, basically pretty much of that, all of it actually with Fujifilm. And so welcome. Tom's actually one of our neighbors in University Research Park here in Madison, and he can tell you about why Fujifilm purchased CDI, which was based here in Madison, and has made another purchase in Wisconsin as well in the past. So take it away. Thanks and welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Hasegawa, President and CEO of Fujifilm Cellular Dynamics. It is my great pleasure and the honor telling great collaboration between Japan and Wisconsin at this seminar. Fujifilm has been known as green color imaging business, I think, but actually started X-ray film supply and healthcare business in 1935 next year after its establishment and already has 80 years of experience in healthcare. And weight of healthcare is about currently 30% of total Fujifilm and second biggest in sales after document business and the biggest profit driver of the total revenue of about $20 billion. And the Fujifilm has 77,000 staff at this moment. And in year 2030, the healthcare will be largest division, assuming 50% of Fujifilm revenue. That's what we are trying. And healthcare mainly consists of two areas. One is the diagnostic, medical equipment business, and the other is the life science to support therapeutics, and where FCDI belongs to. And let me briefly talk about the history of how we come into this Wisconsin. So while film sales constantly dropped in last decade, Fujifilm was looking for space to expand its business with its technological assets and found life science is the area where market is growing. And Fujifilm can apply imaging technology, nanotechnology, analytical things, and process engineering technology. And started life sciences by acquiring Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies, which handles Chaucer in North Carolina in 2011, and expanded bio-CDMO business with engineering technology of Fujifilm, succeeded constantly and invested heavily in USA business growth. Then interested in next generation regenerative as size of the cells are almost the same as film particles and also having materials in life sciences. So these are kind of common. In biotechnology area, cells are very important, especially stem cells, and also induced stem cells like iPS cell became the hero, having the great academia works and also prizes around 2010. And Fujifilm did not have much business fundamentals at that time in that field, looking for and found cellular dynamics in Wisconsin. And CDI was famous for leading IPS cell platform company, spin-off venture from University of Wisconsin. And James Thompson was one of the founders. And at that time, WDEDC supported a loan for incubating small companies. Fujifilm expected outstanding collaboration opportunity with famous stem cell expertise for synergy and then acquired. And after the acquisition, we have collaborated together with science and technologies and found many things. And one of the things that we share kind of common vision and common value that respect science, technologies, and great people, and intellectual properties, and so on. That's very important to do business together. So that's one thing. And the other thing that we have sent lots of Japanese staff gradually to work together here in Madison. Mm-hmm. And now we have 10 international staff coming from Japan, working very closely with local staff here. And we also have corporate lab in Japan. International discussions are always inspiring. And we are trying to continue contribute globally from Madison, Wisconsin. And actually, the shipping, all of the IPS-related sales shipping are from this Madison at this moment. And it's expanding very rapidly, thanks to everyone's support. We also have a good collaboration with Promega about the cellular-related things. And I actually was a big fan of Yona Yona Ale in Japan, which Rob mentioned before. And also we share a great value of loving beers in Japan to Wisconsin, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, stem cell knowledge and expertise of people in Wisconsin is really great, thanks to the great environment of stem cell research, economic support, and education like this webinar.
Yeah.
And after working together, cells need fine quality media, reagents, and cytokine. Those things we also learned. And after working together, Fujifilm invested further to expand stem cell business and acquire media company, pure chemical company, and cytokine company to grow together in last 7 years. So we can deliver high quality life science products and services to contribute.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. So
Well,
thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Tom. And as you noted, I mean, Fujifilm's presence here was really a natural marriage in so many ways because CDI, Cellular Dynamics International, was founded by Jamie Thompson, Craig January, and Tim Camp, who are all part of the UW-Madison research structure. And of course, parallel at the same time that Dr. Thompson and others were working on stem cell research, the same thing was happening in Japan. And so, as you mentioned, the induced pluripotent stem cell lines were almost simultaneously developed in both countries. And so it really makes a lot of sense. Well, let me have a little time for questions among ourselves, and then I know that some people in the audience are probably going to want to chime in. What could make, we've got a strong relationship with Wisconsin and Japan. You're all examples of that. What are some things that could make it even stronger? How can more Wisconsin companies, whether they're large companies or medium-sized companies like Great Dane, how can they get more involved? And what, if anything, is holding us back? The yen right now against the dollar is probably not in a favorable position as far as Japan's concerned. Workforce, that's always something that can, it's both sides of the Pacific, really, but certainly in Japan as well. So what are your thoughts on that and where we're at? I'm just going to go back. Let me start with you, Rob, because in a strange sort of way, you're there because to maybe I shouldn't say escape, to work around regulation in Wisconsin that limits you to about how far you can grow here. But there's a variety of other factors too. So you mentioned the 8-year process. What's it like or should it be like for young companies that or even medium-sized companies that maybe want to be in Japan?
Well, I'll jump right to a hot topic. I literally went to bed dealing with this and woke up to more communications with Japan this morning. So in these regards, here in the US, we use a lot of malt, the malted barley from Breese Malting Company, which is a Wisconsin-based malting company. They are an excellent company. They are potentially the largest malting company in the US, really provide excellent products, and they do not have a presence in Japan. And I really want to use their products over there. But I can't say we're having difficulty, but we have not confirmed our ability to import their products into Japan yet, and what it means, especially in terms of the tariffs. Tetsuya Kiyosawa, my partner, was at the Customs Bureau yesterday trying to start the discussion. We're hearing that the import taxes might be greater for different types of products. So, you can have your grain in various forms. There could be barley, there could be wheat, oats, it could be malted, unmalted, it could be malted in different ways. And we're hearing that there might be different tax rates for the different products, which when you're importing a wide variety of these products might potentially cause a lot of confusion. So anyway, I've spoken with the principals at Breese Malting Company. They are intrigued by the idea of having a greater presence in Japan. We really hope to become a showcase over there for their products, and have a lot of the Japanese craft breweries follow suit by using them. And again, they're very strong and international. They're just not really in Japan at the moment. They're a very strong company. And I think it could be great for them, great for us, great for Wisconsin if we can succeed in getting them over there. And, there's a lot of wisdom here on this panel. So if anyone has advice for me, please let me know. Everyone should have my email by now.
Yeah, right. Well, I think that sounds like a cue for Dan Miller. Dan, I mean, I have to believe that over the course of the 50 years, there have been different things related to trade regulations, tariffs, taxes, those kinds of things. Any advice for Rob? And he's already mentioned Jetro. I assume you can always turn to Jetro maybe for some help on this. But Dan, what are the kinds of things that maybe could stand in the way of an even deeper relationship with Wisconsin's economy and the Japanese economy?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll reach out to Rob directly and we could talk through some possible solutions to
Perfect.
challenges that he's facing. But I think as a company with a Japanese company with a long history of doing business in the United States and in Wisconsin, it's our responsibility as an established company to help smaller firms trying to get established here, smaller firms from Japan. And as Rob touched on, business development often starts with a personal connection. And I think as a company that's been in the state for 50 years, we see that as our responsibility and frequently have meetings with other firms in Japan that want to talk to us about our experiences here. And it's all about learning from others' experiences too. Why reinvent the wheel, learn from the mistakes that others have made and successes that they've had. And so from our standpoint, we feel a pretty strong responsibility to keep that going and to pass it down.
Oh, well, that's awesome. So, well, good. I look forward to hearing about a great conversation with offline with you and Rob. So that's excellent. Frank, obviously Promega has a long history in Japan as well. What are some lessons that you feel have been learned over time and what are some other opportunities you see that perhaps businesses in Wisconsin can take advantage of? And by the way, we haven't talked a whole lot yet about foreign direct investment. So there are a lot of Japanese dollars, yen, coming into Wisconsin and every other state. So Frank, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a couple of comments, but first and foremost, I heard the words that you mentioned, maybe with Rob, about patience. Doing anything in foreign countries like Japan, China, and etc. Patience is virtual, and over this long period of 27 years, there are always ups and downs and so on. So I was particularly point towards a question about the currency influence. As you all know, right now, we're on the 30-year strong position of US dollars versus Japanese. Perhaps from there, just share with our experience and how we view this. And first of all, Promega really doesn't pay much attention, other than the fact is that we learned from our CFO that half of the revenue of Promega come from foreign currency, but 80% of the material made in US. So therefore, in general, as a company running, Promega prefers a weaker dollar. So it's just good on the profit and business. But that being said, for each area, the fundamental of the company is really built upon having strong relationships with especially our customers, but all the distributors and internal colleagues that we have in those regions. So therefore, you have the currencies right now at 30-year, 32-year, like strong, or Japanese yen is the lowest. But there are times it's going to reverse. It's in some ways kind of out of our control. But meanwhile, we do recognize it can be quite significant. So I always joked about that. I visit Japan many times, and back maybe 10 years ago, I bought a souvenir at the Tokyo airport. It is 10,000 Japanese yuan. At the time I bought it, is $1 equals to 80 Japanese yuan. So I basically bought it for about $130. But now it's like 1 equals to 150 yuan. It's almost half price of that. They do influence business, but the fundamentals doesn't change. We continue focus on those fundamentals and building relationships. And so one thing about potentially how to improve even further, maybe is the sharing of the one thing our Japanese branch does beyond every other branches is that our GM and our PKK team takes 20 to 30 distributors every year before COVID to visit Madison in August. So it is a both business and cultural blended visit. So that imagine they come here, what they learned, and many of these distributors, and Pomega is not the exclusive relationship with them. So they represent other company as well. So perhaps that can be a potential leads to once they learn Wisconsin, learn Madison, learn how the business can flourish, and then perhaps the other Japanese companies that they're working with have interest in Wisconsin. And my last comment is that we have challenges hiring talent domestically, as perhaps in many of you knowing the labor market right now is very challenging. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of talents like from Japan directly come here and working for us, but we do have is collaborations and partnerships with, as Tomoyuki-san just mentioned, Fujifilm, CDI, we have that collaboration. And then we have many collaboration partners in Japan. And then directly from there, we embrace their talent and their expertise and working together with us. So just a few Olympus, Kazusa Research Institute, and a few others that we constantly work with in Japan.
Excellent. And Tomoyuki mentioned something earlier, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. They have a strong international division here. There have at times been trade missions to Japan, and I'm sure there will be in the future. And as you just noted, Frank, there's cross-Pacific traffic as well along the same lines. What are some other tools that whether Tomoyuki, Dan, or Frank, that you think companies here in Wisconsin should avail themselves of if they're interested in these kinds of opportunities? Dan, let me start with you because I know you've worked these pathways a lot.
We have, but for us, it's I guess it's the other way around. We're growing a business.
Right.
Our Japanese parent company here in the United States. So I'm not sure I'm the one to speak to how to develop business in Japan.
Mm-hmm. But in terms of that investment from Japan, any tips there that how others might help attract it?
Again, I think it comes down to connections between companies. I think
Okay.
if you're trying to do it alone, it's much more difficult. And I think companies need to avail themselves of organizations like JETRO and WEDC to help pave the way, help them pave the way to making those investments.
Very good, thanks. Tomoyuki, let me get back to you. Another Fujifilm investment or acquisition in Wisconsin was Terra Medica.
Yeah.
Which was it's in the health space as well, more around imaging in certain ways, it seems to me. But yeah, what are some other tools that you might recommend to others who might be looking for opportunities involving Japan, one side of the Pacific or the other?
So from my view, I think Wisconsin has very strong asset in life science, healthcare area.
Yeah.
And as we are, what we are thinking is that healthcare is a kind of stable business compared to consumer electronics field or something different, because everyone is worrying about health and very key. So we'd like to constantly grow organically. And also, if we see lots of new technologies coming from spin-off from university and also new ventures and spin-off entrepreneurship, these are great things of US and also in Wisconsin. So I think if Wisconsin grows up strong points like these, especially in stem cell field and healthcare, we are very pleased to work strongly together, I think, with Japan.
Yeah. Frank, other advice that you might have. Thank you.
Yeah, not sure I can add a lot more based on what I just commented on, also the other panelists spoke on. But I would like to support what Dan is saying, because I made a similar comment last time when there was a different but similar themed session, perhaps all organized by that economic development from Wisconsin. So that is the communication among companies who are doing business in Japan, in the Wisconsin companies, like the panelists here, and perhaps a lot more in the audience. And so that sharing, and then not only on the experience, but also connections, may present new opportunities. And the other quick comment is that Pomega, as I mentioned, is a private company, and we do strategic, let's say, merger or acquisition, but not as often. So that being said, we're very keen on out licensing and in licensing technologies. So our PKK branch as being one of the very active and strong branch that bringing in technologies from Japan, different companies to Pomega, we evaluate, and then we make certain deals when it viewed as appropriate and so on. Just want to add that additional note.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you, Frank. You know, I just wanted to mention a few other companies, and as you noted, Frank, there was WDC was part of a forum where you were at, and the theme there was all around these kinds of ties. And Missy Hughes, who's the secretary of WDC, she said during that forum that Wisconsin's home to 58 Japanese-owned firms, and with 80 facilities that employ about 8,500 people. So that's not insignificant. So some other names in that world, Arrowhead Pharmaceuticals, for example, in Madison, they're expanding around here. The gene silencing drugs is a big part of what they do. Let's see, Exact Sciences. They're doing some work around cancer that could have some applications in Japan. There's Komatsu, there's Wapaka Foundry. So those are all companies with those kinds of ties. So I kind of just want to pose a couple of questions here from our viewers. First one was just how is the changing political climate affecting your businesses in any way? And I think the person who asked this question is probably thinking about, trans-Pacific kind of traffic. So any thoughts on that? Is there anything on the political end that's affecting what you're doing? Maybe not, I'm judging from the silence here. So that's, but good. Another question, have supply chain disruptions led to any new challenges in recent years for operations here or elsewhere? So yeah, supply chain challenges. Anything there, Rob? I mean, you talked about the malt.
So a lot of our equipment and raw materials is coming from the US, also Canada, China. So, confirming, not only when the equipment would be manufactured, but also the length of shipping time. has, been problematic for us. There's certainly been a big increase in our construction costs. We're doing the ground up in the village of Akyu in the city of Sendai. And on the 18th, we'll be having a meeting with our construction company, and they're going to give us the bad news about how much the construction cost has increased. The majority, well, actually all of the financial investment on our side is coming from a US-based LLC, and the rest of the funding is coming from a loan from JFC. So there's a lot of big issues still up in the air. Once we see what the realities are of these cost increases, not only construction, but the equipment costs have gone up, the shipping costs have gone up. There's going to have to be a certain division between the US-based LLC and the JFC to compensate for these increased pre-opening costs.
Okay. And by the way, when you do open, I know, as you said, you're going to have a tasting room, but it sounds like also if you walk in there, it'll be a little slice of Wisconsin.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Let me show you so the mayhem you see behind me is me getting ready to move. I'm actually selling my house and I'll be living in Akyu. I think we're in a unique position here because we are going to be the first we're going to be the first foreign brewing entity to actually have a brick and mortar brewery in Japan. So at the moment, all of the craft beers that are, branded as foreign or non-Japanese, those are contract brewed in Japan. So we're a little different because we're distinctly American, but we're also certainly Japanese.
Yeah.
And this is the #1 decoration.
All right.
Very nice.
Wisconsin Brewers Guild sign. We're hoping to have some Trek materials there. Of course, we talked about Breeze malt, so our menu will reflect a lot of what you see at the Great Dane pubs. Shinji Muramoto, my partner and owner of Muramoto Restaurant here in Madison.
Right.
He'll be running the tasting room over there, and he's going to have Wisconsin, classic Wisconsin food items. We're trying to find cheese curd manufacturers over there or learn how to make it ourselves. So.
Yeah. Good luck with that one. That's probably a very specific Wisconsin talent. So as we move towards the close here on things, and by the way, I hope Tomoyuki or Dan or Frank can send some customers your way when you open, Rob. What's the date on that? What's your anticipated opening date?
Late June or July.
Okay. All right. So a little while, but hey, we're getting there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, as we close out, anything we have not covered that you think is important for our viewers to know? And just, any final thoughts about this Japan-Wisconsin relationship that people should take away? I mean, it feels to me like, at a time when there's a lot of turbulence, we've got also a fair amount of continuity and stability and lasting relationships that can be drawn upon. But so, Frank, I'm going to start with you. Any final words or anything we haven't touched upon that you think is important?
Yeah, maybe just quickly. One is that I learned quite a bit from last time, and then this time about Japan being the largest or one of the largest investing countries in US. And so, but the fact you shared about Wisconsin was interesting because overall, I think Japan is #1 to US, just among all countries, beats Germany, beats China. as you said, 36 states are number one,
Yeah.
and the other was, but Wisconsin is number 7. So I guess the point is that we can still do a lot better.
Yeah. Right.
In that regard. And then my second comment, because there was a reference about China is the number 1 in Wisconsin, 1.8 billions. And perhaps just from my own perspective, I hope and wish US in terms of business and economics and doing all great with countries like Japan and like China continuously. But to that earlier question, there are many uncertainties, and especially around China. So I think our GM just came in last month and really concerned about the relationship with Taiwan, and potentially if something happens, and then there could be a lot of supply issue related things will come up. So, but Japan is relatively stable, so represents good opportunities.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Yeah, and just for all of our listeners, yeah, China's number 3 in Wisconsin in terms of total dollar value, with Canada and Mexico ahead. But that's North America, so you can understand why those 2 countries would be right up there as well. So Dan, other closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think cultural differences between Japan and the United States is something that may hold some US firms back from trying to do business there, or Japanese firms from doing business in the United States. But as someone who's been in a management role for the last 25 years in a Japanese company, I can say that we have a lot more in common with our Japanese coworkers than we have differences. And I think we all grow when we get a chance to work closely with individuals from another culture, and I think it makes us stronger. And I don't think companies should hesitate to try to do business with companies across the Pacific.
Yeah, really important point. Thank you for raising that. Tomoyuki,
Yes.
other thoughts before we
Yep.
close?
So I would like to say, seeing is believing. And as Dan mentioned, I think both countries and states have a kind of very common value. So I think if you travel to Japan, you can quickly find great things like good food and clean, nice, safe. These things are quickly understood, as I felt the great things of Wisconsin, like nature, people,
Yes.
and good food, beers, and so on. So I think seeing is believing, traveling, and have a bigger transaction, I think these will definitely help their relationships and
Yes.
the future brightness. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, Tomoyuki. Rob, let's close with you. Do you have, you still have your emblem there for viewers who might want to see that one more time?
Sure.
You got it right with you? All right, look
Beautiful.
at that. That's beautiful. That will soon be up in Sendai, which is about 2 hours north of Tokyo. So,
Yeah.
Rob, any other closing thoughts? Anything we failed to cover?
I'm just not really sure of the connections here, but I think everyone, if they're not already aware of him, they should know about Andrew Seaborg, the honorary consul for Japan here in Wisconsin. He is certainly heavily vested in trying to increase Wisconsin-Japan trade issues, and he could be a strong ally for anyone who has questions in those regards. He's certainly been helping me out significantly.
That's a great introduction in this forum. Thank you for doing so. Yeah, Andrew Seaborg, honorary consul, is in Madison, and if somebody who's watching this cares to do so, just reach out to me or Jeff Mayers, and we can make sure you get his contact information as well. All right. Well, I believe we have to close out again. I'll leave it to Jeff to close with any other advice or thank yous. And all right, take it away, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, Tom. And thank you, panelists. That was really a great briefing on what's going on. And I think we should organize a field trip to Japan, to the Great Dane's new pub, because I think that would be highly appropriate. And I'm sure we could find funding for that, right? Okay, so So Tom, you're in charge of organizing that. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks everybody. No, that was really great. I mean, I really like the seeing is believing thing, and the stability of Japan in this time of turbulence. Japan's been a great partner for the United States, and obviously it's a great partner for Wisconsin too. And the Kikkoman example in Walworth County has been a hallmark of that. And so congratulations on that. That set the path under Pat Lucy years and years ago. So anyway, I want to thank everybody. This is, as I said, the fourth of our 4 trade policy discussions this year. And we certainly hope to be back next year. If you have suggestions, please email mayors, MAYERS, at wispolitics.com or info@wispolitics.com. That will help us. Want to thank the Wisconsin Tech Council for being a partner in these discussions. And I also want to thank Michael Best Strategies, our sponsor for these discussions and for the Talking Trade podcast, which again, you can see at wisbusiness.com. We'll have a new one posted this week. So this is Jeff Mayers now signing off for today's discussion, and we'll see you next time.